Have you ever wondered why the more you speak, the less power you seem to hold? The more you explain, justify, complain, the smaller your presence becomes. And the worst part? You don't even notice it happening while you're pouring your heart out, detailing every frustration, every failure, every pain you think you're healing. But your mind, it's taking notes. It's recording every word like a script and slowly turning it into your identity. Here's the truth most people won't tell you. Every time you vent without reflection, every time you narrate your own misery out loud, you're anchoring yourself to it. You're reinforcing the very cycle you want to escape. Now, don't get me wrong. This video isn't about bottling up your feelings or pretending to be made of stone. It's about something much deeper: preserving your power, knowing when to speak, and when silence is the strongest move you can make. Because here's the harsh but liberating truth: every time you ramble, excuse, or play the victim, you're not helping yourself. You're slowly chipping away at your own strength. Today, I'm going to walk you through 13 Stoic lessons that will teach you one powerful skill: when to shut your mouth. Why? Because the Stoics understood something timeless: silence is strength. As they said, he who masters his words masters his destiny. And if you absorb what I'm about to share, you'll stop speaking from your wounds and start living from your core. You'll shed the victim label and begin to reclaim your quiet power. So, are you ready? Before we dive into the 13 lessons, let me introduce you to someone, Isabel. And no, this isn't one of those picture-perfect comeback stories. In fact, her beginning is messy, raw, a little too familiar. Isabel was 34, and if there was one thing she was really good at, it was narrating her pain. She talked about everything, from petty fights with her partner to late-night panic attacks, from grocery store meltdowns to I'm falling apart Instagram stories. Talking was her therapy, or so she thought. At first, it seemed to help. Her friends listened. Her posts got shared. Her stories blew up. Comments flooded in. Stay strong. You've got this. Everything happens for a reason. And Isabel, she felt seen, heard, real. But truthfully, she wasn't healing. She was recycling, drowning in the same pain, again and again. Then came the moment that changed everything. Her best friend Clara, usually sweet, always supportive, looked her dead in the eye and said, "Issa, I hate to say this, but it feels like you enjoy suffering. You talk so much about your problems that I honestly don't know if you want to move on or just stay there." Boom. Silence. Isabel didn't say a word. But that night, lying alone in bed with the lights off and her phone on airplane mode, one sentence echoed in her head, something she had read years ago, but never really heard: the more you talk about a wound, the harder it is to heal. And just like that, she went quiet. Days passed. No more Instagram rants. No more being the first to reply in WhatsApp groups. Friends started wondering, is something wrong? But nothing was wrong. For the first time, everything was finally happening. She was processing, not performing. She was feeling, not feeding the pain with words. She was hurting, yes, but she was also healing. And that's when something unexpected happened. Someone recommended a book by Marcus Aurelius. Isabel had never touched philosophy before. But what happened next stayed with her forever. She hadn't planned for her world to shift from a single sentence, but that book, with its plain and quiet cover, pulled her in, and suddenly everything began to make sense. Isabel found herself underlining sentence after sentence, each one landing like a quiet truth she'd been waiting her whole life to hear. Speak little, and only when necessary. Choose not to be harmed, and you won't be. What you hear, what you see, what you say, it all shapes you. Each word cut deeper than any comment section ever could. For the first time, Isabel saw herself clearly, a woman who had unknowingly sculpted her identity through complaint, self-pity, and emotional oversharing. Not because someone forced her to, but because she had done it, day after day, through every post, every dramatic conversation, every teary late-night phone call. She wasn't healing. She was rehearsing her wounds, and so she chose something radically different. She went quiet, not the kind of silence that suffocates, but the kind that's conscious, intentional, awake. Every time she felt the urge to spill her story, to reach for sympathy, to narrate the storm, she paused, took a breath, and asked herself one simple but powerful question: am I saying this because I need real help, or because I want validation? It was awkward, at times lonely, but above all it was freeing. And slowly, that silence changed. More than just her mind. It changed her relationships. Her conversations with others became calmer, more meaningful. When she spoke, people leaned in because she wasn't filling space with noise. She was offering something rare, presence. Funny thing is, her problems didn't magically vanish. They were still there, imperfect, unresolved, real. But they no longer ran the show. They weren't the headline of her life anymore, because Isabel had stopped narrating her chaos and started acting on her rebuilding. If you ask me what truly changed her, it wasn't just the silence. It was what that silence opened up. The clarity, the self-respect, the focus. She stopped telling herself a story she no longer wanted to live in. And that, my friend, that is Stoicism, even if no one ever called it that. Isabel realized this. It's not about saying more. It's about choosing what not to say. Because when you stop repeating what hurts you, you finally create space to build what heals you. And that's exactly where you are right now, today. You stop living from your wounds and start living from your strength. Let's begin. If you're getting value from this message, consider subscribing and becoming an exclusive member to access unique content. And drop a comment below. Tell us, are you ready to stop telling everyone what's going on in your life? Or just write this: I am a Stoic. That'll be your commitment. Because here's what you need to remember. Every time you speak poorly about yourself, I'm a mess. I'm not cut out for this. I can't get it right. You're not just saying words. You're handing the world a script. And guess what? The world listens. Your words act like a loudspeaker for your identity. The more you repeat them, the more true they seem. Not because they're true, but because you made them true. Think about it. You meet someone new, grab a drink. The vibes lighten till, within minutes, they've told you they're terrible at relationships, indecisive, and never follow through on anything. Even if they're laughing, don't you start seeing them through that lens. That's exactly what happens when you do it to yourself. You shape how others treat you by how you speak about you. And here's the spoiler. Let's get something straight. If you constantly speak down to yourself, don't be surprised when your mind starts treating you like someone unworthy of peace, progress, or potential. The truth, your words aren't just a reflection of how you feel. They're commands. Every sentence you say about yourself, especially the ones laced with self-doubt or shame, is like laying a brick. And brick by brick, you end up building your own mental prison, one you'll walk into willingly and later beg to escape. The Stoics knew this over 2,000 years ago. For them, language wasn't just a decoration. It was a weapon, a tool, a mirror, a map. Epictetus said it bluntly. If someone speaks ill of you, and it's true, correct yourself. If it's false, laugh. But here's the twist. What if the person speaking ill of you is you? This is where Stoicism becomes less of a philosophy and more of a daily practice. Because the way you talk to yourself, it's not just background noise. It's blueprint. They believed every word you choose, especially about yourself, is an act of creation. It builds the person you're becoming. That's why they didn't waste breath. They didn't speak in circles or dramatize their suffering. When they spoke, it was intentional, clean, clear, strong. Their silence was disciplined, but their words, pure power. And here's the thing, it's not just ancient wisdom. Modern science backs this up again and again. Psychologist Mark Leary once wrote, "Self-compassion can be an antidote to the cruelty we sometimes inflict on ourselves." And where does that cruelty begin? Right in our language. In those offhand comments like, "I'm always a mess. I can't get anything right. No one ever chooses me." You don't need enemies when your inner voice is already at war with you. A study from Stanford University found something fascinating. People who describe themselves using more positive, hopeful language show higher levels of resilience, mental clarity, and self-motivation, not because they were born that way, but because they rewired themselves through their words. That's the power of speech. It's not just self-expression. It's self-direction. Your self-talk is the rudder of your ship. It may look small, but it determines your course. Keep calling yourself broken, unlucky, lost. You'll sail in circles. Change the words and the current shifts. So how did you begin? Lesson 1. Reframe the script. The next time you catch yourself thinking I'm a mess, stop. Say instead, I've made mistakes, but I'm learning. That shift doesn't soften the truth. It strengthens it. It gives you room to grow. 2. Stop disguising self-sabotage as humor. You are not the clumsy one, the perpetually single one, or the never good enough one. That kind of joking chips away at your self-worth one laugh at a time. 3. Push back on outdated labels. If someone says, "You've always been like this," answer them out loud or in your mind. "That was then. I'm not in that place anymore." Let them hear it, but more importantly, let you hear it. This isn't about toxic positivity. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it isn't. It's about conscious narration, telling a story that aligns with who you want to be, not who you used to be. Because here's the truth. If you don't rewrite the story, you'll stay stuck acting out a character you've long since outgrown. And here's another truth. Listen to. Your transformation doesn't need a stage. Let me tell you something people tend to forget. Not every breakthrough needs a broadcast. You don't need to upload your healing. You don't need to post a picture every time you smile, or a video every time you grow. Some changes are sacred. Some growth deserves silence. She walked out of the dentist's office and didn't post a thing. Sounds small, maybe even silly in today's world where every minor detail, every cup of coffee, every gym mirror selfie ends up on social media. In fact, let's be honest, some people only do things so they can post about them. The accomplishment isn't the act itself, it's the photo, the caption, the applause. But here's the radical idea. Not everyone deserves access to your process. Not every transformation needs witnesses. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is evolve in silence. Why? Because the moment you talk too much about what you're doing, you risk turning your transformation into a performance. It stops being real, it becomes a rehearsed monologue. You start living for the reaction, not the result. You speak to impress, not to express, and slowly, what could have been a breakthrough turns into noise. So many people get stuck right there talking about what they're about to do. I'm gonna fix my life. I'm working on something big. I'm healing. I'm growing. Just wait. They post updates, inspirational quotes, pictures of their journal. But behind the curtain nothing changes. Now picture this. You're going through something real. You've made a choice to take better care of yourself, to wake up earlier, to move your body, to eat with intention. But you don't announce it. No Instagram story, no dinner table speech, just quiet effort, daily effort. And then, one day, someone looks at you and says, "Hey, you look different. Are you doing something?" That moment, that's not about validation. That's about evidence. Because your change has become so authentic, so integrated, so real that it shows, not because you said anything, but because you embodied it. That's when you finally understand what the Stoics have been trying to teach us all along. Real change doesn't need a megaphone. It doesn't scream. It doesn't campaign. It radiates. Silence doesn't weaken change, it fortifies it. Epictetus said it best. Don't explain your philosophy, embody it. In other words, don't explain your growth, live it. Don't justify your choices, walk them. Don't look for praise, just commit. In peace, quietly, consistently, for you. Because the most powerful proof of transformation is not what you say, it's what you do. When no one's watching, no spotlight, no applause, just self-respect and discipline. Because that's what real growth demands, not exposure, but commitment. The external distracts, the internal, it transforms. And if you're looking for a modern example of this Stoic truth, look no further than Jose Pepe Mujica, the former president of Uruguay. He spent nearly 15 years in prison, much of it in solitary confinement. And when he was released, he had every reason to be bitter, angry, vengeful. But he wasn't. He made one quiet, powerful decision No hatred, no revenge, no shouting. He didn't announce his healing. He lived it. He gave up presidential privileges, lived in a modest farmhouse, drove the same beat-up car, donated most of his salary. He didn't preach simplicity, he practiced it. And without ever needing to convince the world he had changed, his life proved it. So here's what you can take from this. You don't need to post your progress for it to be real. You don't need to explain every scar to make your healing valid. You don't need to narrate every milestone or every relapse to feel worthy of your journey. In fact, the quieter your path, the stronger it becomes. Because when you remove the noise, what's left is action. And yes, it's hard at first. We want to share. We want the world to know we're evolving. But sometimes, the more we share, the more we leak energy we should be using to build. So here's your move. Start keeping a few things just for you. That new habit you're trying to build. That tiny goal that's just starting to form in your heart. That quiet change you know will take time. Protect it. Not out of fear, but out of respect. Sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's reverence. It's the highest form of self-love. It says, "This matters to me too much to let the world interfere." But also, learn to ask yourself, why do I want to share this? Is it because you're truly excited and full of purpose, or are you craving a dopamine hit from someone's validation? There's a big difference between saying, "I'm proud of what I'm doing," and spilling every detail just so someone replies, "You're doing great." The first comes from inner peace, the second from insecurity. And if you want to build a life that lasts, choose peace. Above all, get comfortable with this. Making progress without narrating it, growing without explaining it, healing without announcing it. Because the energy you use to explain yourself could be energy spent building yourself. When you build in silence, what you create stands taller. It grows deeper roots. It becomes undeniable. And here's the beautiful paradox. You don't need people to know what you're doing. Eventually, they'll see it. And more importantly, you'll feel it. That's where real change begins. Far from the noise. Close to the core of who you are. Lesson 3. Shut your mouth and let your actions speak. Let's not sugarcoat it. Talking is easy. Anyone can say they're going to change. Anyone can say, "This year's different. This time, I mean it. I'm going to wake up early. I'm quitting social media. I'm building $1 million business." It's noise, just a noise. But when it's time to act, that's when the truth steps in. Because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter what you say. It only matters what you do. You've seen this before. Someone constantly talks about their big plans. They sound inspired, motivated, ambitious. "This year, I'm getting my life together. I'm finally starting that thing. I'm cutting off distractions." But then, the alarm accidentally doesn't go off. They're still glued to Instagram. That business didn't happen because of the economy. Another excuse, another delay, another story. And slowly, all that passion that once felt inspiring, it starts to ring hollow. Because words without action are like clouds without rain. They don't move anything. Now, Compare that to the one who doesn't talk much, but slowly you notice something shifting. They show up differently. They're calmer, sharper, more intentional. They don't say what they're doing, but you feel it in every room they enter. That's the power of quiet consistency. Marcus Aurelius said it best. Do every act of your life as if it were your last. He didn't say promise your best life. He said live it, do it. Because we're not here to impress people with speeches. We're here to build something real with actions. The Stoics had no patience for empty words. They believed speaking without action was just another form of self-deception. Epictetus put it bluntly, it is not words that make a man great but actions. Speech without action is just smoke. And the true Stoic, they want something solid. Now, don't get it twisted, this isn't about staying silent because you're afraid. It's about not wasting breath on a journey you haven't even walked yet. It's about keeping your dreams like seeds meant for soil, not microphones. So before you speak, ask yourself, is this for me or for them? Let me give you an example. Greta Garbo, ever heard of her? At the height of her fame, she was everywhere. Millions adored her. Thousands of letters poured in daily. Her face was legendary. Greta Garbo was the very definition of glamour, mystery, and talent. Her face lit up every screen. Her name was spoken with reverence. She was adored, idolized, unforgettable. And then without warning she vanished. No dramatic press conference. No drawn-out farewell tour. No final interview. She simply stepped away. She walked out of the spotlight and into silence for decades. She lived quietly far from flashing cameras, red carpets, and the public eye. She never explained her choice. She never fed the rumors. She never returned to satisfy anyone's curiosity. And that silence, that became her loudest, most powerful statement. The world kept wondering why. But Garbo never answered. Instead, over time her silence made her even more iconic, more respected, more mysterious. Her legacy didn't fade. It deepened, solidified. So what does this mean for you? You don't need to be a global star to choose that same kind of powerful quiet. You don't need a stage to step away from just. Stop narrating your life before you've lived it. You don't have to announce, I'm starting at the gym. Just go. You don't need to tell everyone, I'm working on my self-esteem. Just do it. Even if no one sees, the change will be felt before it's ever told. And when you start behaving differently, when you stop reacting like you used to, when you choose peace over chaos, stillness over noise, you don't owe anyone an explanation. Your evolution is not a negotiation. If someone asks, why are you so quiet lately? You don't need to say a word. Just smile, because you know what they don't. Your life isn't made of speeches anymore. It's made of choices. Words fade, but actions, they remain, they resonate. And when you stop talking so much and start doing, that's when the world finally listens. Not through noise, but through your quiet power. Lesson 4. Change the story you tell yourself and you'll change your life. Let's shift inward now, because the most powerful voice in your life is your own. The story you tell yourself quietly, constantly, even when you don't say it out loud, is shaping everything. More than your environment, more than your circumstances, more than any critic ever could. That inner voice? It's always on. It speaks when you wake up, when you fail, when you stand in front of the mirror and decide what kind of day you're going to have. And here's the scary part. What you repeat becomes what you believe. And what you believe becomes what you live. Not the one-off thought, not the occasional doubt, but the script on autoplay, that pattern you whisper to yourself every time something goes wrong. This always happens to me. I'm such a mess. I'm just not good at this. No one cares. No one forces you to think that. No one plants that in your mind. You do. And you do it so often, you don't even realize it anymore. But every time you say it, even silently, you reinforce a version of yourself that isn't serving you. A version that feels true, because you've repeated it so much. Modern psychology has a name for this: self-talk. And it can either be your greatest ally or your quietest enemy. Dr. Kristen Neff, a leading researcher on self-compassion, has shown again and again, when you speak to yourself with kindness, you boost not just your confidence but your resilience, your clarity, your ability to recover from setbacks. And no, it's not about cheesy affirmations. It's not about pretending everything is fine. It's about stopping the habit of attacking yourself by default. Ask yourself this when you mess up. How do you respond? Do you soothe yourself or tear yourself down? Do you stay with yourself, or do you abandon yourself emotionally because of symptoms? The most powerful thing you can do is say nothing at all. Not every thought deserves to become a sentence. Not every cruel idea your mind throws at you deserves a microphone. Sometimes silence isn't avoidance, it's protection. That thought that tells you you're not good enough. That voice that says you'll mess it all up again. You don't have to entertain it. You don't have to repeat it. You definitely don't have to believe it. You can't stop it right there. You can draw a quiet line in your mind and say, no, not today. Because silence at the right moment is self-respect. It's self-care. It gives you space, a little window to pause and ask, why did that thought just show up? Do I really deserve to speak to myself like this? Now imagine this. Your mind is a notebook, and every time you speak to yourself, whether out loud or in your head, you're writing something down. I'm not good enough. I'll probably fail. This is too hard for me. If that's what you keep writing, that's what you keep reading. And if that's what you read every single day, what kind of life are you scripting for yourself? What kind of identity are you reinforcing? Now flip that. Who would you become if you simply started writing something different? The Stoics didn't speak often, but when they did, they made every word count. No fluff, no drama, just clarity. Epictetus once said, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. And that includes the judgments you make about yourself. Marcus Aurelius echoed it. The happiness of your life depends on the quality of your thoughts. These weren't just pretty words, they were anchors. They were truths that reminded them and us just how powerful our inner dialogue really is. Because when you start to question the stories that hold you back, when you begin to speak to yourself the way you'd speak to someone you love, everything shifts. It's not magic. It's awareness. It's practice. And it's the most profound form of self-respect. Start here. Notice the phrases you repeat without even thinking. Don't let them pass. Interrupt them. Replace them. You don't have to make a big announcement. You don't need affirmations on sticky notes all over your walls. Just quietly shift the track, like a train changing rails, not loudly, but intentionally. Instead of saying, "I can't handle this," try, "I'm still learning." Instead of, "I always fail," try, "I'm improving every time." It might feel small, but those small shifts rewrite the entire narrative. And if someone asks, "Why don't you complain as much anymore?" or "You seem more grounded lately," just smile, because that's the sign you're on the right path. You're rewriting your story one quiet choice at a time. Because what you repeat on the inside becomes what you project on the outside. And when you change the story you tell yourself, you change the person. You give yourself permission to become. Lesson 5. Understand the power of every word. Let me tell you a story. Once upon a time, a group of frogs was happily hopping through a forest. Suddenly, 2 of them fell into a deep pit. The others gathered around, looked down, and started shouting, "It's too deep. Don't waste your energy. You'll never get out. You're only going to hurt yourselves." One of the frogs listened to their warnings. She looked up, looked around, and stopped trying. Exhausted and discouraged, she gave up, and eventually she died. But the other frog, she kept jumping. Again and again. Harder, higher, smarter. Every time she heard the crowd shouting, "You can't do it," she leapt with more force. And finally, against all odds, she made it out. The others were shocked. "How did you do it?" they asked. "How did you make it out when it seemed impossible?" She smiled and explained. She was deaf. She couldn't hear the others shouting down at her. She thought they were cheering her on. And that changes everything. Because that one detail holds a powerful truth. The words we hear, and even more, the words we tell ourselves, can either save us or destroy us. For one frog, the words became fuel. For the other, they became a fatal weight. Same pit, same struggle, completely different outcome because of language. Epictetus put it simply, but sharply. First, learn the meaning of what you say. Then, speak. Read that again. Don't use your words as noise. Use them as navigation. Every time you open your mouth, you're not just expressing, you're mapping. You're creating direction. You're guiding belief. So ask yourself, where is this sentence taking me? Is it lifting me up or dragging me down? The Stoics were obsessed with precision, not because they feared failure, but because they respected impact. They understood speaking without awareness is like firing arrows with your eyes closed. You could wound yourself, wound others, or waste all your strength in the wrong direction. For them, words were actions. There was no gap between what they said and what they did. That alignment, that consistency, that was their armor. Fast forward to today. We're surrounded by noise, drowning in words. We say things without thinking. Repeat phrases out of habit, phrases we picked up years ago from pain, from culture, from chaos. And here's what we don't always realize. Those casual comments, "I'm such a disaster," This is hopeless. Everything's falling apart. They're not harmless. Because every word creates a vibration, an emotional ripple, a path. You may say it as a joke. You may not even mean it, but the repetition. That's what leaves the mark. Think of your words like water dripping on stone. One drop, nothing. 1,000 drops every single day. Even the hardest surface will start to wear away. That's what careless, negative language does. It erodes you quietly, and the worst part, you don't even realize it's happening. This isn't about being a robot that only says nice things. It's about not being careless with what leaves your mouth. Speak with truth, but speak with purpose. Before you say something, ask, does this bring clarity? Or does it just vent frustration? Is this helping me build something? Or am I just repeating pain? And it's not just about how you speak to yourself. It's also about how you speak to others. Sometimes, the words you say might be the only thing someone hears that day. And in that moment you have a choice. Will your words lift them or crush them? A Stoic chooses carefully because they know a single sentence can open a door in someone's mind or slam it shut forever. So how do you begin? First, listen. Observe your language. Notice what you say without even realizing it. Most of the time, your words don't come from the present. They come from old pain, from outdated beliefs, from scripts that no longer match who you are. Change them consciously. Next, watch your tone. There's a huge difference between "this is hard for me" and "this is impossible" or "I made a mistake" versus "I'm a complete disaster." Small changes, big outcomes. And finally learn to be silent. If what you're about to say doesn't help, doesn't build, doesn't clarify or uplift, why say it at all? Silence often carries more wisdom than any argument. It's the space where intention gets to breathe. So from this moment forward, make your words sacred. Let your speech mean something. Let your voice be a tool for truth and transformation. And if you hear yourself repeating something that keeps you small, don't justify it. Clean it. Speak with intention. And if there's nothing worth saying, say nothing, because your words are not small. They're not just sounds or filler. They are reflections of you, your clarity, your self-respect, your presence. And when you begin to choose your words with care, with purpose, you begin to see yourself differently. And whether they say it or not, the world sees you differently too. Lesson 6. Not everyone understands what you carry inside. Have you ever tried to share something vulnerable and it gets brushed off with a shrug? Have you ever opened up about a dream, something that lights you up, only to be met with skepticism? Or worse, a sarcastic comment, a cutting joke, a careless dismissal? It feels like standing naked in front of someone only for them to look away. Or worse, laugh. You try to explain. You rephrase. You lower your voice. You try again, softer. This time, hoping they'll get it. But they don't. It's exhausting, draining. Like trying to have a heart-to-heart with a brick wall that throws your words back at you. Double-coated in judgment. And slowly, without realizing it, you shrink. You wear yourself out. You water yourself down. You bend just to be understood and still feel unseen. Here's what no one tells you early enough. Not everyone is capable of understanding your inner world, and that's not a failure on your part. It's just the truth. Picture this. You're standing in front of a locked door. You knock. You knock harder. You plead, argue, explain, cry. But the door doesn't open. Not because you're not trying hard enough, but because the key isn't in your hands. It's in theirs. And if they won't use it, there's nothing you can do. That's what it feels like to seek understanding from someone who doesn't share your values, your growth, your path. It's like trying to plant seeds in cracked, dry earth. No matter how rich your soil is, it won't take root there. And that's why the wisest choice sometimes is not to speak louder. It's to go quiet. Epictetus said it plainly. If you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid, brutal, yes, but also liberating. What he meant was this: if you're truly committed to growth, accept that not everyone will get it. Not everyone will applaud. Not everyone will understand why you're changing. And that's okay. Let them misunderstand you. Let them whisper. Let them call you weird. Let them look confused. Because you didn't come here to be clapped for. You came here to evolve. The Stoics understood something powerful. Trying to explain yourself to someone who refuses to listen isn't strength. It's neediness. It's the craving for external validation. And that craving, if left unchecked, it enslaves you. It makes your peace conditional, your confidence fragile, your energy scattered. That's why true freedom doesn't begin with applause. It begins with detachment. Stop needing others to understand your path. That doesn't mean you close yourself off or isolate. It means you get wise. You learn to discern which conversations are worth your breath and which ones just deserve your silence. Sometimes silence isn't suppression, it's protection. It's preserving your inner world from being picked apart by people who haven't earned the right to hear it. Want golden advice? Stop spending your energy trying to be understood. Spend it on continuing to build, because while you're explaining yourself, others are already moving forward. And you? You came here to move forward to. Also remember this: when you explain too much, you open the door for others to weigh in on something you're still forming. And when something is still forming, fragile, fresh, unfinished, exposing it to soon can contaminate it. Some things are meant to mature in silence, like a seed beneath the soil, unseen but full of life. If you dig it up just to prove it's growing, you don't help it, you kill it. So here's the truth: when you realize someone doesn't understand you, don't force it. Not everyone is meant to get your pain. Not everyone can hold space for your growth. Not everyone needs to breathe, smile, and keep walking. When something lights you up, something pure, powerful, deeply exciting, pause. Ask yourself, do I really want to share this? Or am I just looking for applause? And if you're in the middle of real, messy, internal change, protect it. Don't expose it to people who can't see it clearly, because sometimes the most sacred thing you can do for yourself is keep it between you and you. Silence isn't emptiness. It's protection. It's peace. Because let's be honest, if you constantly have to explain yourself to be accepted, you're probably in the wrong room. And that's okay, because you're not alone. There are others just like you walking their own path in silence, eyes clear, shoulders steady, not asking for permission to evolve. You'll find them, but until then, don't shrink to fit in. Don't explain to be understood. Don't dim your light to be accepted. Not everyone will understand what you carry inside. And that's not your fault because what you carry isn't meant for everyone. It's meant for you. Lesson 7. Saying it might calm you, but doing it transforms you. Tell me if this sounds familiar. You're talking to a friend about your next big project. You're hyped. You say, "This time it's for real." You feel on fire like you've already made it. You haven't even started, but for a moment, you feel like you have done it. Feels good, doesn't it? To good. But here's the twist. That high you feel from saying it, it's a trap, because your brain doesn't always know the difference between doing and declaring. Studies have shown that when you talk about your goals, what you want to accomplish, your brain activates the same reward circuits as if you'd already achieved them. That sweet dopamine hit, that sense of satisfaction, the high of "look at me, I'm doing it." But you're not. You just said it. And that's where it gets dangerous. Author Derek Sivers explains it like this. When you share your plans, your brain gets a false sense of completion. You feel like you've made progress. You relax. You slow down. Because why push harder if the world already clapped? Why fight for it when you've already been applauded just for thinking about it? Imagine trying to climb a mountain, but every few meters you stop, climb back down, and run into town to announce your progress. How far do you think you'll get? The truth is sometimes we don't need more motivation. We need less talk. The Stoics understood this with every breath. They didn't define themselves by what they said they would do. They were measured by what they did, especially when no one was watching. To them, virtue wasn't a slogan. It was a life. It was in the action. Marcus Aurelius didn't run around saying, "I'm going to be a great emperor." He simply was. No empty dopamine hits. No need to be admired before the work began. He made mistakes. He faced chaos. But he acted deliberately, humbly, and with weight. So here's a tough truth. If you find yourself constantly needing to explain what you're about to do, it might not be as real as you think. And the more you talk about what you're going to do, the less you actually do it. Not because talking is bad, but because talking becomes your escape. A soft cushion, a premature celebration, a standing ovation, before the curtain even rises. And here's the truth. Real motivation doesn't come from applause. It comes from commitment. When you do things without telling the world, something powerful happens. You grow stronger, not because anyone's watching, but because you're watching. You wake up, you train, you follow through, and no one claps. No one notices, but you do. And that kind of discipline, it's not just strength, it's freedom. You're no longer chasing validation. You're not performing. You're not waiting for feedback. You're just doing. And here's a secret most people overlook. Silent. Action conserves energy. When you don't have to explain, when you stop justifying, defending, performing, you keep your fuel for what actually matters, the work. While others are talking about their plans, you're executing them. While they're posting updates, you're practicing quietly. So here's some grounded advice. Next time you're excited about a goal, don't announce it. Write it down. Let it take root. Let it build traction in your world, not the internet. And when it's solid, when it's real, when it has weight, then, if you want to share it, do so. But don't shout it when it's still a seed. Because too much exposure too soon can dry out something that was meant to bloom in the dark. Now let's be clear, talking isn't the villain here. Speech has power. Words can heal, clarify, connect. But if you talk more than you act, you're building a version of yourself that only exists in conversation, not in real life. And that gap between what you say and what you do, it will hurt. It creates a quiet dissatisfaction, a subtle shame, because you know you're pretending. So what should you do? Don't give motivational speeches before you've crossed the starting line. Don't post epic quotes when your shoes are still clean. Don't perform your transformation live it. Let your work be your voice. Let your results be your introduction. Do more. Say less. Pour your energy into building, not branding, because saying it might soothe your nerves. But doing it transforms your life. At the end of the day, life doesn't change because you announce it. It changes because you act. Because you keep showing up. Because you choose to prove in silence what others only say out loud. Lesson 8. Do you know why we have 2 ears and 1 mouth? Epictetus once said something that sounds almost too simple, like a line from a children's book, until you realize the weight behind it. Nature gave us 2 ears and only 1 mouth so we would listen more and speak less. At first glance, it sounds like something your grandmother might say, but don't dismiss it, because it's not just polite wisdom. It's a power strategy. Listening is not passive. It's not weakness. It's leverage. Real listening gives you an edge most people never develop. It sharpens your awareness. It expands your empathy. It helps you see what others miss. It's how you choose better words, make smarter decisions, and engage in wiser battles. Let's bring it down to earth. You've probably met someone like this. You start sharing something important, a thought, a fear, a breakthrough, and before you've finished your sentence, they jump in with, "Oh yeah, something worse happened to me. That's nothing one time It's exhausting, like your story was just the warm-up act for their personal monologue. They weren't listening, they were just waiting to speak. And the worst part, they didn't learn a thing. They didn't hold space. They didn't hear the heart behind your words understanding. They don't leave space for what you bring. It's all me, me, me. And in the end, you walk away from the conversation feeling more alone than when you walked in. Now ask yourself, do you think a Stoic would do that? Epictetus, who was once a slave before becoming a philosopher, knew what it meant to be forced into silence. But instead of turning bitter, he turned that silence into a virtue. He transformed it into a power. He taught his students, don't rush to speak. Don't use words as armor. Use words as tools. And only speak when it adds clarity, not clutter. Epictetus himself would often sit in long, intentional silences even when he disagreed, because he understood something most people never learn. Silence sharpens your edge. It gives you perspective. It gives you strength. And Marcus Aurelius? He was the emperor of Rome, the one man whose voice could silence a nation. He could have been the loudest in every room. But his journals, they're filled with questions, with doubts, with quiet, vulnerable self-reflection. His wisdom didn't come from shouting over others. It came from listening to everyone, scholars, soldiers, slaves, children. He didn't listen to argue. He listened to understand. Now think about you. How many times have you missed something important? Not because you weren't smart enough, but because you spoke too soon. Because you filled the air with your own words and left no room for anyone else's insight. Listening isn't weakness. It's a decision, a humble, clear-eyed decision to say, I don't know everything, and I'm willing to see what I might be missing. Now picture this. You're in a room with 20 people. One of them has the exact insight you need, but you're too busy talking, proving, performing. So they stay silent. You leave empty-handed. Now flip the scenario. You sit back. You observe. You ask thoughtful questions. You listen not just with your ears, but with your attention. What happens then? You notice what others overlook. You hear the subtext. You catch the nuance. You see the patterns. You make better choices. Why? Because listening is like training in silence, while others show off your studying. And when you finally do speak, your words land. They cut deeper. They carry weight because they're not just noise. They come from clarity. And yes, sometimes, silence is a strategy. Not everything deserves your reaction. Not every comment needs a comeback. Some people, they're just looking for a fight. And if you jump in, you're already playing their game. Silence is not cowardice. It's control. It's class. It's clarity. So what can you do with this? In your next conversation, listen a little longer than you usually do. Don't interrupt. Pause before replying. Ask more questions. Judge less. And value the people who truly listen to you. Because they're rare, very rare. And when you become one of them, everything changes. People might not remember everything you said, but they will always remember how you made them feel. So next time you feel the urge to speak just to speak, remember, you have 2 ears and 1 mouth. That's not an accident. That's design. Use the ratio. Because the one who knows how to listen, they always see what others miss, and they never need to shout to be heard. Lesson 9. If you depend on applause, you won't get far. Do you know the real danger of sharing everything you do? It's not the oversharing itself. It's this. You start confusing applause with progress. And when that happens, you're lost. Because if you constantly need other people's reactions to keep going, you're not building discipline, you're building dependence. Your consistency stops being a practice. It becomes a performance. Your process becomes a show. And the worst part? You stop hearing your own voice, because all you can hear is the echo. We live in an age where everything is broadcast. Every step, every thought, every meal. There are people who literally cannot move forward unless someone is watching, unless there's an audience, unless there are likes. But let me tell you something that cuts through the noise. The strongest part of you isn't what you show. It's what you do when no one's watching. Let me get personal for a moment. Years ago, I spent nearly 3 months preparing for a major shift in my life. I studied, I trained, I planned. I felt ready completely. And then I started talking about it. I told my friends, my circle, my online space, "This is it," I said. They cheered. They congratulated me. I got that dopamine high, that sweet emotional hit from applause. And you know what happened next? Nothing. I didn't start. I stalled. That emotional boost, it tricked me. It felt like I had already done something just because I'd talked about it. And by the time I realized what had happened, it took me another 3 months just to recover the momentum I had before opening my mouth. Here's what I learned the hard way. The problem wasn't sharing the plan. The problem was sharing it for validation. Once I got that emotional reward, my brain went, "We've arrived." When in truth I hadn't even left the station. That was my wake-up call. Because if you depend on applause to move forward, the moment it disappears, so will your drive. The Stoics didn't live for praise. They lived in alignment with their principles, even if no one clapped, even if no one understood. Marcus Aurelius, the Emperor of Rome, wrote nightly about his flaws, what he did wrong, where he could be better, what character traits he needed to refine. He wasn't writing for followers. He was writing for growth. He once said, "True glory consists in doing what deserves to be written and writing what deserves to be read, and even more importantly, doing it even if no one is watching." Because when you do something meaningful and don't share it, you're planting it. You're strengthening it. You're protecting it from the hunger for external approval. And yes, it's harder, but it's also so much more powerful. Here's why it matters. When you share everything you do, you make yourself vulnerable to every opinion, every careless comment, every stray piece of advice from someone who doesn't know you or think clearly. And that can derail you, slow you, shake you. So what should you do? You learn to stay quiet. You move in silence. You build without witnesses. And no, it's not easy. Sometimes it hurts not to share. Sometimes it feels unfair not to be seen. But that's where your character is trained. That's where your strength is forged. So how do you do it? When you achieve something important, celebrate it quietly with yourself. Share it later if you want, but don't turn it into a performance. When you make a new plan, don't announce it. Just start, tweak, build, let it take root first. And when that urge creeps in, that urge to do something just to impress, pause. Ask yourself, is this for me or for them? Because most of the truly transformative things you'll ever do, they'll happen in silence, without applause, without a post. And that's exactly how it should be. You're not here to be applauded. You're here to evolve, to become the strongest, clearest version of yourself, even if no one notices. So drop the noise. Drop the ego. Drop the constant need to share. And focus on what actually matters. The act, the work, the becoming. The movement. What's left when the camera is off, when the room is empty, when no one's watching. Because if you can keep going in silence, that's when you know you're the real deal. And stay with me, because what's coming next isn't just more philosophy. It's pure transformation. These final lessons, they're not just ideas. They're the kind that can rebuild you from the inside out. Let's go all in. Lesson 10. Not everyone deserves your trust. Not everything that shines is gold. Not every smile is sincere. Not every warm hug comes from a kind heart. Trust is one of the greatest gifts you can give, but it's also one of the hardest things to reclaim once it's broken. Because when you trust someone, you open a door. You say, "Come in, this is the real me." But if the person who walks through that door doesn't know how to care for what they find, they can leave you worse than they found you. And worse than before you ever opened up. I know you. You're the kind of person who gives wholeheartedly. You believe that when you bring truth, others will do the same. But life doesn't always return what you give. Not everyone is ready for the weight of your truth. Not everyone deserves access to your mind or your heart. Not everyone deserves the key to your most vulnerable self. Nature understands this far better than most people do. Take bamboo, for example. Did you know it can spend 5 entire years underground without showing a single sprout? 5 years. What's it doing? Not sleeping. Not wasting time. It's building roots. Deep. Invisible. Strong. And only after that foundation is ready it grows upward. That's how your trust should be. Quiet, grounded, patient, and earned slowly. Because if you hand it to the first person who smiles at you, they might step on it before it even has a chance to grow. Let's be real. You've probably experienced this before. You're in a conversation with someone who seems kind. You open up, you talk about something personal, painful. They nod. And then they say, "Oh, please. That's nothing. I went through way worse." And suddenly, it's not about you anymore. It's their story, their pain, their performance. And you're left there feeling smaller than before. Regretful, bitter, exposed. So here's the hard question. Why did you share that? Was it because you trusted them? Or were you just desperate to be heard by someone, anyone, sometimes? We overshare not because someone earned it, but because we don't want to carry what we feel alone. But impulsive trust? That can leave deeper scars than silence ever will. The Stoics understood this better than anyone. Epictetus taught his students to observe before speaking, to give time a chance to reveal someone's character, their discretion, their integrity, their emotional maturity, not because he was cold or distant, but because he knew some truths are sacred, and not everyone deserves them. Seneca put it even more directly. It is safer to avoid trusting than to regret having trusted. That's not paranoia. That's emotional intelligence. That's protecting your peace. And no, this isn't about shutting yourself off. It's about being selective. It's about building relationships with roots, not appearances. It's about speaking less, observing more, because often the one who listens the most is the one who best understands who's worth trusting. Here's a truth to remember. Not everything you go through needs to be told, and not everything you feel needs to be explained. Sometimes silence isn't hiding. It's self-respect. It's knowing your story is precious and not everyone will know how to hold it. So what should you do? First, listen. When you meet someone, pay attention to how they speak about others. If someone constantly criticizes people to you, chances are they'll criticize you to others. That's your first clue. Second, test small before you hand someone a piece of your heart. Start small. Test it. Share something simple, a thought, a memory, a mild frustration. Then watch. Do they respect it? Do they keep it safe? Do they hold space or use it as ammunition? Do they listen or twist it into a story about themselves? And above all, stop sharing out of impulse. Before you speak, pause and ask, am I sharing this because I trust, or because I just need to release it? If it's the second, better to write it down. Better to breathe. Better to sit with it. Because not everything needs to be spoken out loud. Trust? Yes, but trust like bamboo inward first. Quiet, rooted, deep. And only when it's strong enough let it grow outward. Not everyone deserves your trust, but you deserve to be surrounded by people who honor it. And now, we step into something deeper. What comes next is not just reflection. It's a challenge. These final lessons aren't for everyone. They're not warm and easy. They're here to wake something up inside you. Let's begin. Lesson 11. Some battles are only won in silence. Not everything needs to be shared. Not every move needs an announcement. Not every decision needs an explanation. There are moments in life, pivotal moments, where the wisest, strongest, most strategic thing you can do is say nothing. Not from fear, not from weakness, but from respect for your path, your process, your peace. Because some decisions, if exposed too early, they lose their strength. Some plans, if spoken too soon, they unravel. Some changes need protection, not performance. Here's why. When you explain something that's still fragile, you open the door for others to shake it, question it, doubt it, and suddenly it wobbles. Picture this. You're finally ready to walk away from a chapter you've outgrown. Maybe it's a relationship, maybe a job, maybe a version of yourself. You've made the choice, you feel clear, you're ready. But before you act, you tell everyone, and then the noise begins. Are you sure? That sounds risky. I wouldn't do it like that. What if you regret it, and suddenly, what was once clarity turns to confusion? What felt like momentum becomes hesitation? Because external noise has the power to drown out your inner knowing. Nature understands this instinctively. The eagle doesn't announce its flight. It doesn't tweet about the nest it's building. It climbs high in silence, and when it flies, it just flies. No audience, no noise, no permission. And sometimes that is exactly how we need to move, without sharing what's still taking shape. Let me share something personal. There was a time in my life where I knew deep down I needed a major change. It wasn't just emotion. It was that gut-level certainty. Have you ever felt that? I didn't have all the answers, but I had clarity. I made up my mind. I was ready. And then I spoke. I shared my decision with excitement, maybe looking for a little encouragement. But what I got instead? Doubt, fear, worry. What if it doesn't work? Isn't that too extreme? What if you regret it? And just like that, I caught their fear like a virus. Suddenly, I couldn't hear my voice anymore. Only theirs. That's when I learned some battles are only won in silence. Some choices aren't meant to be discussed. They're meant to be executed. Not because you're hiding, but because you're protecting something sacred. The Stoics knew this well. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, wrote not to impress, but to anchor himself. He journaled his flaws, his doubts, his discipline. In private, one of his most famous lines: "The best revenge is not to be like your enemy. You don't have to prove you're right. You don't have to argue. You just have to stay aligned with your truth even if no one understands it." Epictetus taught, act first, speak only if necessary. Because when you act without announcing, when you follow through without fanfare, when you move in silence gets in the way, the ego starts running ahead of the purpose, and your clarity gets lost in the echo. So what do you do with all of this? First, examine your habits. Ask yourself honestly, are you sharing this decision because it's necessary, or out of habit? Out of impulse? Out of insecurity? Sometimes what you think needs to be said just needs to be held a little longer in silence. In private. Second, protect yourself. Not everything you're building is ready for public opinion. Some truths grow stronger when they're allowed to mature without interruption, without explanation, without commentary. Third, make silence your ally. This doesn't mean isolating yourself. It means being intentional with who you open up to. Sometimes it's enough that you know, that you see, that you believe in it. Because, yes, some of the most important battles in life, they're won without witnesses. In your mind, in your discipline, in your quiet ability to keep showing up for something that hasn't bloomed yet. And if you do it right, there will come a day where you won't need to say a word. Who you've become will speak for itself. Lesson 12. The noise of the world is exhausting. Let's be honest, we're drowning in it. Notifications, opinions, updates, interruptions. The world won't stop talking. But even worse, it's not just external noise. There's internal noise. Self-doubt. Constant comparison. The pressure to explain everything. To validate everything. To prove that every step you're taking is real. Do you realize how exhausting that is? To feel like you can't just be. That every change you make has to be narrated. That every intention must be announced to feel legitimate. Living with the volume turned all the way up, just to feel like you're making progress. But here's the problem. Noise often looks like action, but most of the time, it's just distraction. And when that happens long enough, your soul runs out of battery. Because talking, posting, explaining, proving, it drains you. Sometimes, the most healing thing you can do isn't to speak louder. It's to turn down the volume. Has this happened to you? You're trying to change something. A relationship, your health, your mindset, your direction. And instead of focusing on the process, you catch yourself telling everyone about it. Every step, every adjustment, every little win needs to be shared. As if the journey doesn't count unless there's a witness. But here's the truth. Change doesn't need applause. It needs direction. Epictetus said it perfectly. Don't explain your philosophy. Live it. And if you really apply that, it will quietly change your life. Because the more you talk, the less you do. The more you explain, the less you move. The noise becomes the main character, and you become a spectator of your own transformation. There's a simple story that captures this perfectly. A monk lived at the top of a mountain. Every day, he would walk down to the village in silence to gather water. He never said a word about his routine. One day, a young man asked, "Why don't you talk more? Why don't you teach what you know?" The monk replied, "If I need to speak for it to be seen, then I don't know it well enough yet." And he kept walking. Sometimes, noise only shows up when there's insecurity. If you're sure, you don't need to announce it. If you're at peace, you don't need to justify yourself. If you're focused, you don't need to narrate every step. So what can you do? First, identify your noise. Ask, what am I saying just to feel better? What am I sharing out of discomfort or habit? Learn to tell the difference between real communication and emotional static. Second, lower the volume. Mute the people who only talk without adding value. Step away from conversations that pull you away from yourself. Not everything deserves your energy. Not everything deserves a reaction. Sometimes, the very energy you spend talking is the energy you need to finally act. Third, enjoy your process in private. Not to hide it, but to protect it. Make silence your sacred space, a place where your growth doesn't depend on likes or comments or validation. And yes, at first, it feels strange. We're conditioned to narrate everything, to live as if life were a constant live stream. But after a while, you feel something you haven't felt in a long time. Peace, focus, clarity. Because noise wears you down too. And when you finally learn to live with less of it, you realize something life-changing. What truly matters doesn't need volume. It only needs direction. And now, here we are. The final point, the last lesson. The one that ties it all together. Lesson 13. If you do it for yourself, you don't need to say it. Think back for a moment. The times you truly changed. The shifts that reshaped who you are. Did you announce them? Or did you just do them? Chances are the moments that truly defined you were the ones carried out in silence. No explanations, no heads up, no need to prove. You just acted. That changed everything. Because when something is born from within, it doesn't need applause. It doesn't need to be performed. It just needs to be lived. There's a subtle but crucial line between sharing your journey and saying it just to be validated. And if you don't recognize that line, it quietly steals the power you hold inside. Let me share something that changed me. One day, someone close asked, "Why are you so quiet lately? Why don't you share anymore?" And I told them the truth. Because this time, I want the change to be mine, just mine. And saying that, it was freeing. I didn't have to explain. I didn't have to perform. I didn't need an audience. All I needed was to keep my word to myself. That was the day I understood this truth. When you do it for yourself, you don't have to say it. You feel it. You hold it. You live it. And that's enough. Seneca once wrote, "The reward for a good action is having done it, not talked about it, not been praised for it, but simply knowing you took the step." So think about this. If your growth depends on someone else noticing it, Is it really yours? Or are you renting your progress to public opinion when something comes from a deep place? You don't need to hang it on a wall. You don't need to repeat it 20 times. You just need to live it. And that, my friend, that is the truest kind of freedom you'll ever feel. So what can you do? First, change in silence, not to hide, but because you're committed. Let your motivation be alignment with yourself, not the need to be seen. Second, let time speak for you. What you're building now will reveal itself later. Words can lie. Actions never do. Third, remember, you are not here to impress anyone. You are here to evolve. If someone notices, beautiful. If they don't, so be it. Because if you're doing it for you, that is enough. This is the close, the final lesson, and maybe the most important one of all. You don't need to announce it. You don't need to defend it. You just need to live it. Because when you truly do it for yourself, you don't have to say a word. It shows. It transforms you and everything you touch before you go. If something in this video resonated with you, if a sentence, a shift, or even a single moment stirred something inside, then subscribe to this channel, Stoic Capsule, and consider becoming a member to dive even deeper into this work. And I want to hear from you. Drop your commitment in the comments. What will you begin to build in silence starting today? Or simply write, I am a Stoic. From today on, I stop talking about it and I start living it. That way, I'll know who the true Stoic warriors are. The ones who made it to the end. The ones ready to act. And don't forget, hit the like button, tap the notification bell, and share this with someone who's ready for quiet transformation. Also check out the playlist on screen. It's packed with ideas, stories, and timeless guidance to help you navigate this life with more wisdom, power, and peace. Click it. Keep going. And as always, take care and keep embracing your inner Stoic.